Hello and welcome to the Cubicle Liberation. Okay, let's start that one over.
No, you got to keep that. That's the perfect intro. You got a fart sound with your mouth.
Use me. I just had a lot of beans. Sorry. Okay. Hello and welcome to the Cubicle Liberation podcast. That's a mouthful. The first time I said it, it did not work. I'm here with Fletch. How you doing, Fletch?
Good today, my sir.
And today we're on part 3 of the Inevitable Success series. What's important? And really, we're going to look to help you identify what's important and what's not important, and have systems and tools and techniques to kind of differentiate the two. I'm excited about this because I think this feels like we've been building up to this pretty well, to kind of how to know what's true, the building understanding, and then what's important is kind of a subcategory of building understanding. What's your first initial thoughts on like what's important and what's not important for you in your life?
Well, like the first thing I would want people to consider is how important it is to understand what's important, and because it's you know, it's kind of like, well, yeah, obviously I work on important stuff, but if you don't know how to differentiate what's important from what's not important, you may think you're working on something important because it feels like it's important, but it may not be. It may not really get you to a place where massive success is the inevitable result. And all of us are working on something all the time, even if what we're working on is laying on the couch and watching TV. That's what feels important, right? That's what feels like we want to do at any given time. So being able to take a step back from your own life and consider what you're doing and notice things that you're doing that are not spent on things that are going to move you closer to inevitable success in a massive way can help you carve out some time that you can then reallocate to things that are not only more likely to give you success, but they're also working on things that can give you massive success in your life. So I think we'll probably get into that more, but that was the initial thought on that thing.
And I think a good metaphor here is to kind of like putting together the pieces of your own life. What's important to you might not be important to someone else, and vice versa. All the time you have people say like, I was successful because I prioritized this, or I did this, and maybe that was true for them, but that's not necessarily true for you. So really having to look at this, and I like how you said, you want to make sure it's important to understand what's important, not just to understand, but to try to also take action on what's important versus not what's not important.
Well, one of the things, and one of the reasons that David, you and I have focused on methods and helping understand method is that it may very well feel like and seem important to do a certain thing. But if you don't have a method for knowing how you got to that conclusion that you're now trying to, optimize and work on, you may be very wrong about that. You may think that it's important to never have an argument with your significant other. And maybe that's actually not important. But if you're spending a lot of time and resources on doing that, if you're spending a lot of time and resources in, I'm just going to throw this out there because we'll probably challenge it as we go along today. Making your business something that works without you being involved with it. Is that important? Maybe. But how do you know it is or not? Right? What have you done to consider how important it is for you to not have inputs from your customers? Maybe it's something that actually is counterproductive for you to not be involved with that kind of thing. I'm not saying it is or it isn't, but until we challenge these things that we might already believe, we may not see things as clearly as we could if we had a different way of approaching it.
Yeah. I think that that's very useful for people to consider that angle. I think that also what really helps me a lot is to activate my prefrontal cortex by breathing. And because oftentimes, as we talked about in the other ones, your brain's going to want to identify, it's built to live out in the jungle and identify like a charging tiger or something, or like identify a more of a physical direct threat. And it doesn't really work that well, or there's some really big holes in the modern world that we live in. And one of the best ways, the part of your brain that can think about this the most logically, the most reasonably, the most rationally, and what really matters is the prefrontal cortex. And by slowing your breathing, focusing on your breathing, it actually activates that part. So that's going to really help you. It's also going to help you overcome some of your blind spots, some things that you might not have considered without activating that part of your brain. So that should be helpful.
Well, like one of the things that like I just kind of double down on that is to realize, or at least consider and think about, what makes you different than an animal. And one of the things that makes us different is that we can delay gratification by doing something and building something that is not going to give us maybe immediate results, but playing it out over a year or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 lets us be done with money forever. That's not something that animals do. They see food, they can get food, they eat food. Humans are farmers, ranchers. That is something that is, to what I know about, right, is somewhat uniquely human. Every other organism does not have the ability to delay gratification, to delay the thing that it seems like they want right now. And therein lies your power as a human. And because of that, as an implication of that, a lot comes into play. And when we're talking about inevitable success, what we're really talking about is noticing those times when we can delay gratification to create something bigger and more, and that contains a bigger opportunity for us to succeed.
It's more certain, or it's stronger, or it's exponentially more effective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you've got a seed, but you got 2 options. You got a sunflower seed. Okay. You can eat the sunflower seed, or you can plant the sunflower seed. And if you plant the sunflower seed, you're going to get 1,000 sunflower seeds. If you eat it, you've got the sunflower seed, and it sustains
you fed yourself today, and sometimes you're starving and you have to eat the sunflower seed, and that's okay. Sometimes, right?
Yeah. But this is kind of the nature of one of the things that we have is as a being that has this, like you talked about, prefrontal cortex. We have the ability to do this. And if you're looking at trying to compare yourself with other humans and what you can do and what you can achieve, and really understanding the power that you have, it lies therein. Knowing what to do right now with what you have to plant the seeds you need to plant and eat the seeds you need to eat.
Yeah, let's I think there's a really good metaphor here that we mentioned before. I'll move a little bit further down here. And I think that a good way to think about this is that you're like in the mountains, and you're trying to navigate like 4 miles through the mountains. And somebody else is on the other side of the mountains, and they're trying to come to the same mountain or something. And so their situation, what makes sense for them, what's important for them, might actually be very different than yours. The weather could be completely different. And so part of that is that even though something might be good for someone else, it's not necessarily good for you. And understanding your specific situation, where you want to go, is going to be really useful, the full context in navigating your way there. And again, it's not just about, okay, I want to go fast. I want to move fast. What if you're moving fast in the other direction? That doesn't really help you. Maybe that's the direction somebody else, Steve, needs to go. the guy next to you, whatever, he's got to go that way. So that's good. That's important for him. But for you, it's important to go in this other direction. And I think keeping that in mind for like your personal objectives and goals and priorities.
This is where I think a lot of the like self-help and personal development advice goes wrong, is that it becomes ubiquitous, or like in a way, everybody's given the same advice: work harder. Well, that might not be enough to get you there, right? If you're in a place where you don't have the right materials to climb the mountain, just going to try to climb the mountain is not the advice you should take. Mm-hmm. You need to figure out what you need to get where you were going. And then there might be some times where you need to work hard, but just telling everybody they need to head east 200 meters. Well, that doesn't get everybody to the top of the mountain, so to speak, especially if they're starting in a different place. Right. Mm-hmm. And so the work harder, or, well, that's just the easiest one that comes to mind. You may need to do hard work, but the answer is not working harder. It's understanding what to work on and figure out.
It's more important. Yeah. You can work hard doing nothing. And I think also what you're looking to do is put together almost like a recipe, or if you think about like going to your destination, there's several mini destinations that you want to meet along the way. You want to arrive at that place. And so there's all sorts of different things where 99% of the time, maybe this certain thing is not important. It's not useful, but for your specific situation, it is. And so really considering your situation and putting together the pieces of the puzzle for you and your business and your goals specifically are going to be important for you to identify. So,
yeah. So, like for me, and I think I've talked about it on this, I'm on like 3 podcasts right now, so I can't remember exactly what I said when and on what, but one of the things that really helped me get to a place where I understood what I needed to do was fasting, right? I needed to unplug from stuff and then unplug from some of the food, things. Those are all inputs, right? I needed to have there be less noise because there was too much and my brain was trying to work on too much. That might not be where you are, right? I'm not saying everybody should do it, but if it feels like you're stuck or spinning your wheels, that's something you might want to try. Right. And so we can all talk about our personal experience and what we've done what we've done, and then what feels like it caused success. Right. But we're not even really completely aware, none of us, of what it was that we did and what we brought to the table to be successful in the endeavor that we were trying to accomplish. And right, so which is why I'm really careful with advice, not just what I give, but also what I listen to, right? That's what worked for them. It may not be what works for me, but it doesn't mean it's invalid. It just means I don't just take it, rubber stamp it and say, this is what I'm going to do now. Right. And,
really have
and
to
it's
what the context.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons why, like when I think about people who say work harder, and that's the thing, like persevere. And many people who do that wind up successful. Right. The implication of that, right, is that many of the things that we could do, we're just not over the threshold yet. I say almost, a lot of them work. A lot of the ideas you have right now would work if you got over the threshold with it. But not all of them. Right. And so that's why we need the ability to consider and build scenarios and make sure we're not taking a jump where we say, if I do this and I do this and I do this, and then some magic happens and I get this result. Like you need to really look at that and magic happens part and understand whether or not you can navigate that with what you have currently. So the work harder would say, put your head down and just start on the path that you think leads where you're going.
Right.
You may get to a point where it's impassable, right? Where you cannot move further because you didn't have this other thing that you needed to have when you got here to let
you have to turn around and go all the way around the mountain, the other side of the way
back. And that's what becomes demoralizing and takes a lot of people out. And they're like, building a business too hard. I tried it 3 times. Didn't work. Well,
and also even like sometimes even if you arrive at that place where it's like, oh, I got to turn around, try not to think of it. Sometimes it's inevitable that you have to meet that wall, and there's no choice. No one knew the wall was there. You didn't know the wall was there. You met the wall. Now you know that the wall is there, and so now you know at least a path that you shouldn't be on. So it's not necessarily a waste. It's just inevitable that there's going to be things that you're going to do that just don't work in life in general, and so you should accept that. That's a kind of actually a little bit makes you feel much better when you mess things up. It's like, okay, well, sometimes that's just going to happen.
But that's where we're talking about working on what's important. Is we don't want to encounter those all the time.
Agreed. Yeah, we want to learn from that, and it shouldn't happen all the time. If you can plan better and strategize better and really consider what's important, you'll meet less of those. But there are some of them that it's just going to happen for a lot of people in a lot of situations. There's going to be challenges on any path where you try to accomplish anything. Yeah, there's not really much of a challenge if you just want to sit around and watch Netflix all day. That's not much of a challenge. But if you're trying to accomplish things, you're trying to make sales, you're trying to build
unless
things,
your remote runs out of batteries,
or maybe like you run out of food, or you try to do that for years at a time and eventually you run out of money or something.
Yeah.
But there's not a whole lot of a challenge there, basically. And today, if that's all you wanted to do, well, you can do it. You can make that happen. But if you wanted to make a sale or build a unique part of your business or something like that, then that's going to be more challenging. And so you're going to have some more roadblocks, and that's fine.
Well, and here's the thing. It might be more challenging, but it might not be as well. Like
that's true.
It might be just not necessarily hard. It's hard if you don't understand it. If you don't understand it, it seems impossibly hard almost. Or if you're in a place where I don't have any money, so then we think nobody has any money, and I don't want to buy stuff, and that means everybody else doesn't want to buy stuff,
right?
And we're just kind of stuck in that point because of what we are experiencing. Right. Or what we have experienced. And so that objectivity, to the degree that we can navigate it, right. And get to a place where we're not just looking through our eyes, but looking at ourselves, looking through our eyes, we can understand some different things that can be infinitely helpful to know what we need to do and consider and think about and work through that we may not have already. And those are really the opportunities in life where we can make massive gains that seem magical almost. It's not like I work twice as hard, I make twice as much money, or even work twice as hard and make 10 times as much money. It's if I work on the right stuff and get over the threshold where I understand it, well, now it's not even hard. And so like sales being one of those is a big piece, right?
Yeah, I think this leads into a couple things that I think are important and they're related. Down here, one thing that I look for in my business is I look for kind of multipliers and amplifiers. So for example, I identified at some point, like there's right now there's 3 main parts of my business. I have information business where I sell information. There's the client part of my business, and then I do lead generation. And a couple of years ago, I realized, Maps SEO or local SEO, it runs through all of those. So by building I identified, building my Maps SEO skills, getting more data on that is important, because it amplifies all three parts of my business, as opposed to some other, let's say there's another part of SEO that wasn't Maps SEO. Maybe it's not so helpful in some of these other parts of my business. So it's less of an amplifier. And so that was always a huge priority for me. And kind of along the same lines, really what I find, like if you're trying to get to a specific destination, there's usually like a handful of goals. Like maybe there's 2 to 10 different goals that when you get them all together, you put them together and they create a whole that's greater than the sum of the parts. And from those goals, you can extract out priorities. And usually those priorities are kind of like, okay, what's important to work on now? So I have like my priorities are a few different project areas. And within those project areas, there's a handful of projects. And so I try to make sure that I make progress on the project areas that are most important and the projects within those project areas that are the most important going forward. So
okay,
that's helpful.
So one of the things I would ask you right now is, how do you know that what you're working on is important?
It fits within the destination or destinations that I want to go. It amplifies my business in that direction.
And does that business get you all the way to being done with money forever?
Potentially, yes. Yeah. It's definitely, absolutely. And it's not so much I feel like I'm going to work for the rest of my life, and because I enjoy a lot of what I do. Is it going to, so that it's not so much one of my, I mean, I guess it is one of my goals, is to have enough money to where I can do whatever the hell I want. But yeah, no, I think it will. I think that there's those parts of my business can definitely get me there. Yeah.
Okay. So working through that process right now, I'm doing a little mini interview, right?
Sure.
So you say you think it will. Why?
Well, it has high earning potential. It synchronizes well with my past experiences and my past building of understanding, and I have a lot of assets that can work towards that. And there's just so much opportunity. I don't see a cap on the opportunity. Also I have a lot of data that points to people will be willing to pay, be able to have customers in those specific areas that it actually does make money. People are actually willing to pay for those like services essentially, or products.
Okay. Could you one of the first things you said, it has high earning potential. Would you unpack what you mean by potential?
Yeah. Like there's a couple different ways to look at this. You could look at it like, well, how much of a market is there, for underwater basket weaving or something like that? That's kind of the metaphor or the idea that people use. Well, there's not really much of a market for that. So that's part of the equation. Part of the equation is, okay, are there enough people out there that will probably pay for it? And this is not a simple question. It's something that I'm making an estimation for, but I have data from the last several years that say that yes, definitely there will be people who pay for it. And I'll have reason to believe that good reason to believe that there's quite a bit more people out there than have already paid me that would pay me, that would pay someone. So there's when I say huge earning potential, means that within my specific skill set and experience and with a potential market, there's lots and lots of opportunity, basically unlimited for all practical purposes.
So the reason I wanted to kind of get to you using that word, and I was baiting a little bit, right? Because we want to talk about shiny objects. And this is one of the things that people say, oh, there's a huge potential. Well, why shouldn't we all operate on huge potential?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it should be part of the equation for sure, but I don't think you should search for, I think this goes back to our thing about best. It's not so much about finding the best or the most opportunity. So there's certainly other things that I could have done or can do that have more potential, but there's a threshold I'm trying to meet where it's significant enough and it fits, and it's something that it's a track that I can stay on for a long period of time. With the shiny object, what happens is people start driving towards San Francisco because that's where they want to go. And they're a third the way there and they decide, actually, you know what? I want to go to Kansas City. They're a third the way there. Actually, I want to go to Miami. A third the way there. Actually, I want to go to New York. So they end up just never going to any destination. And so really there's a threshold for, is it good enough? Is there enough of a market potential for me to continue on this path? And I think that is where it's less about, it's not just about, okay, what's the best? What's the most opportunity here? Okay, if I bought Bitcoin in 2011, I could have, whatever. And we'll cover that in a second. But it's more about it, again, meeting the certain threshold. I think that's the best way to put it. And once it meets that certain threshold, I'm not really concerned about other things that could make more money or that have higher potential, but it's a high enough potential.
And that's a big thing that I don't think is being said as much as it should be said, which is, you're not in the best place. How would you know it's the best?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Like there might still be something better than what you see as the best right now. So
the best is such a hard, unless it's like a really, really super small controlled environment.
If it's 100-yard foot race, you can say, "Oh, that was the best racer, right? They had the best time."
Right. He's got the world record.
But those are extremely limited applications of that concept. And
life is much more fuzzy.
Many of us aren't Olympic athletes, where we're really trying to do. I said many. I didn't say me.
I
know. But what I've done is consider why shiny objects are so appealing is because they look better when cast through the lens of someone who knows how to trigger things in your mind and get you to buy. And that's a very dangerous place to exist. Now, if you're working 9 to 5 at $12 an hour, is it better for you to try to do your job better and get a promotion and a raise and all that kind of thing, or look at a different way of navigating, how you allocate your resources, right? Your time, your attention, and things like that. So, one of the things I'd like people to think about, consider, again, it is kind of along the lines of that little, kind of mini mock interview. How are you deciding right now what to spend your time and resources on?
I spent a lot of time and energy on figuring out what's important and identifying the goals. I'm constantly reviewing my goals and my objectives that help me along the way to the goals. Those are like milestones along the way. And then I take those goals and objectives and I create priorities that move them forward, that move me forward towards that. Like I said, I have kind of priority project areas. And then within those project areas, I have prioritized projects. And so that is how I'm constantly checking in on, what's important, or, am I moving in the right direction? Hopefully that answers his question, although I'll move on. We have a child interruption, which is totally normal in these times. I want to talk about missed opportunities here because this is part of the shiny object syndrome. And this is part of what helps me stay on point on what's important because I know it's moving me towards my priorities. And just acknowledging that there's going to be missed opportunities. So I think, Fletch, I answered your question.
I was listening.
Do you want to restate it here? Oh, you were listening.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I had my one ear in. The big thing is that sometimes we, like, one of the metaphors, I guess, or, analogies that happens is, if you walk the same trail long enough, you kind of beat that trail down and down and down until it's deep enough that you can't even see over the sides. And a lot of people do that in a way in their own life where they've done something so long that they cannot see something, they cannot see a different way to go. That trail was something that's been walked by many people many times, and they're now in something they know works, but but they can't really see something else to do that's actually more important, right? And that's a metaphor. Sort of like that's a physical metaphor, but that happens in our mind as well. We have habitual ways of thinking and looking at things that have become so entrenched that we've lost the ability, so to speak, to look at things differently.
A good thing or a bad thing. I think sometimes putting your blinders on and ignoring all the shiny objects is good. You've identified something that's good.
So I'm not arguing when is it the right time to put your blinders on?
I think
because if we want to deliver value, this is something that we need to discuss and figure out.
Okay. I would say my thought on that would be that when you've had enough, you've poked around enough and you've gotten some feedback and you've kind of confirmed to a significant degree that yes, the path you're on it is getting you towards the part of the mountain that you want to go to. You're moving generally closer. People are buying to enough of a degree, and you think, okay, well, maybe actually now I think I can just amplify what I'm working on. Versus, seeing something, you try some stuff out, you try to sell the underwater basket weaving DVDs, and you figure out, oh, yeah, maybe actually I can't get anybody to buy them. Like you try to sell, and you try to sell, and you try to sell, and you can't get anybody to buy them. That is a different kind of feedback. So you've gotten some feedback. You feel you've felt pretty good. You've really looked at all the different angles that you can, because you can't look at all angles, but all the possible angles that you can consider are quite a bit. And you think it meets all the thresholds, and you think you'll be able to, if you keep walking on that path, you'll be able to keep growing.
Yeah. And this
is an iterative process that you are constantly updating over time.
Yeah. And so this is one of the things that helped me kind of navigate my own mind and get the heuristics and like actually what I was doing in life oriented differently, was that I realized, like, I can go get a job that pays well, right? Director of marketing or whatever it might be, make $250,000 a year. Do the math, right? What's going to happen if you have a $250,000 a year salary? Okay, well, call it half-ish. It's gone in taxes. Now I'm making $100,000 a year, right? So now I have a house. I get that job. It's going to probably feel like, let's maybe upgrade my car, go through the kitchen, right? I spend some money, right? So you start whittling that down, and you realize, okay, I got a $250,000 a year job, and I can maybe save $20,000 a year and invest it. And then we think like, oh, well, I'll invest it, and then in 10 years, it'll be worth blah, 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 right? But if you just look at what you can save in some vehicle that's outpacing inflation, how many years would I need a $250,000 a year salary to get to $2 million? And it turns out that it's like 20. And $250,000 a year is, a pretty decent salary. You're up in the upper echelons of what people make when they have a job. And so you're walking a well-worn path, and you're doing it better than almost everybody else. And you're still going to have to do it for 20 years to get to a point, if you're reasonably, responsible with what you're doing and don't have a ton of luck on the investments that you're putting in. And if you're working a job, they're limited, your 401k is going to likely be managed, and that kind of, like, other people are responsible for that. You're going to make some money, and it's better than not making that much money. But if you realize you're on that path, then at least think it all the way through and consider how long you're going to have to walk that path and whether or not you're willing to do that. And if you're not, then you may need to look at things differently than you have before. Right.
Yeah. Like the building of the scenario, really using the part of the brain that allows you to model what's going to happen in the future and model some expectations. It's very useful. And it's part of what makes us able to do so many different things, because we can look into the future. It's very unique, maybe to mammals or something, and some maybe squid, or maybe like
the difference between planting a seed or eating a seed, right? It's kind of one of these things that's maybe uniquely human. Maybe there are other animals that can do this kind of thing as well. I don't know of any off the top of my head, but what I do see are a lot of humans that don't use that ability. Yeah. And that's one of the things, we called this, cubicle liberation podcast. You're not going to get liberated from that effing cubicle unless you use this power that we have.
Yeah. It's good. I mean, or you're super, super lucky, but you can't really bank on that. So it's not inevitable.
Yeah. So, I wouldn't gamble on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't bet your life on it. And really, even, if you do use this part of your brain, use this skill, build the skill, and you do get really lucky, well, then great. So might as well go ahead and try to go for this.
You win either way.
Right. You win either way. So try to bank on, okay, what's going to give you the most inevitable success? Meet that threshold to where you can get to where you want to go in your life. Because maybe everybody's got this part of what makes life so awesome, and the fact that I'm so happy to be, live in a country where I genuinely am free to do what I want to do for the most part, is that I get to pick my path. I get to pick how I want to live my life for the most part, and take advantage of that. If you live in a free society, take advantage of that and really figure out what not just what you want, but what's important to you and what's going to take you.
Okay. So you brought something up that I may rail on for a second here. Yeah, it's like, you said that damn word, want.
Right.
How in the F is what you want a valid way of making a decision?
It is in some ways, but I feel like it is oftentimes leaned upon too much. So there's
because what you want can be triggered by so many things, and especially people who understand what we know with marketing and salespeople or whatever. They can get, hey, just go to the refrigerator and open the door, and you're going to find something you want.
Or right? How many people voted for somebody and they think that they represent one thing, and they actually, they do things that are like, wait, they did that? I didn't know they would do that, because they thought they wanted that.
Like if you ever have a conversation with somebody that you care about and you're trying to figure out what to do, and someone, and maybe you as well, I've done this, I do this. Well, what I want to do is this. Stop that whole shit and say, that's not valid. I have wanted to do so many things in my life that did not consider where it would take me, what it would take to do it, what the results would be, what the costs would be. Yeah, but I want to. Like, I think this whole follow your passion thing. I'm not saying it's wrong. What I'm saying is it's very misunderstood. Many of us take that wrong.
I think you have to navigate a lot of the nuance of, like, if you can, like, if you want something but you haven't like modeled at all what that really means or why you want that, then that's can lead to a lot of waste or some really bad circumstances. But if you've really like considered the angles and really done a lot of thought on it, then wanting something could be important. And there's other parts of life where wanting kind of matters a little bit more, like who you pick to be with.
Well, here's the thing is, it always matters. That's what's so dangerous about it, because it directs and shapes our behavior.
Let me rephrase that.
Maybe the reason I want a chocolate cake is because I just saw a chocolate cake.
You just saw a commercial.
Apply that to what you think you want out of business. Oh, I just saw a guy on Instagram with his Bugatti. or his Lamborghini.
Yeah.
That's why
that's what you want. Right.
Okay.
But does that really going to be useful to you?
Maybe
it will be.
What it's going to, do you know what it's going to take to do that? Do you have the pieces acquired? Do you know what it's going to take to acquire the pieces necessary?
Yeah. What's the path that you need to go on to take that? Maybe that's not the path you really want to be on.
And how much is it going to take to get on that? And I'm not saying like they may not be that hard to assemble, but what we do is we start at the wrong end and say, this is what I want. And so I'm going to try to reverse engineer this and find justification for the reason that I'm valid for saying I want it, because I can see, oh yeah, well, now I need to build a digital marketing agency and then get 100 clients that are paying me $5,000 a month and blah, blah, blah. Right. It's like, oh yeah. Okay. But that's like, there's all these weird, like, and then magic happens somehow. And I know how to close clients at that dollar value. And there's enough clients at that dollar value in something I know how to talk. Like, there's so many things that we just like rubber stamp and don't really consider and think about.
Yeah. Really think
when we start wanting something really bad. And I think it's not that the law of like attraction is wrong. It's not, but it doesn't give us really anything that we can do today to understand how to build to getting that thing on our vision board. Right. We know we want it. And so it makes us work harder or notice things that might point to that and all that kind of thing. But that's scattershot and luck for the most part. You know, some people get it and then they'll say, oh, it's because law of attraction. I had this vision board that I got that Lamborghini or whatever it might be. There's a lot more luck involved than people realize.
Yeah.
Who succeed. And the only people we hear from are the people that succeed. Why? Because they have bigger voices. They have more followers.
Yeah. And to be clear from like a context standpoint, Fletch and I have had the want conversation off camera many times about wanting, and should we really care too much? Sometimes you got to ignore your wants. I mean, if you just live by your wants, you're just like
should you want that?
You want, like, if you just live by your wants and you just kind of let them run wild, then you're kind of just like a child. Like, to be honest, that's like kind of how to have a non-adult.
And most of us are most of the time. Like we
to some degree,
we never went through some rite of passage where we began thinking differently. We've used a lot of method of learning. We've used the method of learning that we were born with, which helped us not poke ourselves in the eye and figure out how to navigate our hand to food. Yeah, I still do it. Okay, so that means I'm still living like it. That's not going to go away. The objective is not to replace that. It's to supplement that with a way of figuring out what you should do consciously to put things in place where you have a life of meaning, of contribution, of earning and success. We need to supplement the default method of learning that we all have, which is I did something, I got this feedback. And so that means if I do this thing over and over again, I get the same feedback. No. If you have kids or you've been around kids, you'll know that kids up to a certain point will say, hey, they'll scream and they'll get attention until they don't. And then everything's like, wait, I'm just crying and nobody's giving me they're actually ignoring me now. But we still have the same model in place. It doesn't really change the way we operate as a human to say, oh, I just need to yell differently or cry differently, or like we don't think of what the other model of understanding things is and really work that out. And that's one of the main things that I'd want to share as much as I can, is that if you do something and you get the same result every time, and that's a good result, keep doing it until you get a result that you don't want. And then you need to realize there's something else you need to understand. And that's the time you climb out of the little rutted path that you're on and look around and try to make a distinction on something that you had not noticed earlier.
All right. So we move beyond the once here. I feel like that took us down a good path. And I think it's important to consider kind of like the summary of that. I feel like it's important to consider why, just not just what you want, but why you want it, and really pick that apart and,
Right.
and don't follow it too bad. I was talking about missed opportunities. I think this is something that gets a lot of people. It's really hard for us to think, oh, I could have bought Bitcoin at this time, or I could have invested in this thing, or I should have done this thing. And part of what helps me with this is that there's, except right now, and I challenge someone to tell me that this is what I'm about to say is not true. There's unlimited amount of opportunities that you're going to miss. For all practical purposes, that number is infinity. Okay. There's always going to be, no matter what you do, you're going to have missed opportunities. Okay. So hopefully we're all there. If you disagree with me, give me a proof and show me somewhere where you can actually go through life without missing opportunities. All right. Now, some opportunities are better than others. And so sometimes you miss a really good opportunity and you kind of like, it's unfortunate. So what this means is that there's going to be even really great opportunities that you're still going to miss. So it's not just okay opportunities. It's not just good opportunities. There's going to be excellent opportunities that you're going to miss. All right. But you're going to try to ride the wave or capture really good opportunities as you go through life. This is an important thing to be able to identify the opportunities, but it's also really important to be extremely critical of potential opportunities. And if you really don't feel like you understand it, it's important that you don't move forward with that. If you didn't feel like you understood Bitcoin in 2014, then don't feel bad about not having gone into Bitcoin. Now, maybe you understood it and you really had some good foresight and you thought it would be, be really worth a lot, then maybe that is a better missed opportunity that you still didn't, or maybe you actually did take advantage of it. But there's so many opportunities that are going to pass me by. And this is going to help you, especially if you're doing internet marketing or starting your own business or something. There's always a new technique. There's always a new idea. And not that you can't invest your time and energy in learning those new ideas or implementing them or integrating them into your website, into your business. Don't worry about missing them. There's so many different excellent information products that I've passed up on, or excellent offers that I pass up on because it doesn't really take me to where I want to go. Even though it might be this really great new market, maybe like Instagram when it first came out or something like that, and maybe it's still a great opportunity, but it's just not something that I should necessarily take advantage of. And even if it is something that I should take advantage of, missing it is not necessarily the end of the world. So really try to put the opportunities within the context of where you've already gone and where you're going. And so that's why my business is focused on SEO. And anytime I kind of move too far away from SEO because, this is a really great opportunity to do Facebook ads or something. It usually comes back to kind of bite me in the ass, and it just kind of distracts me from the kind of the destination that I want to go. And so that's one way to fight against this stuff. Like there's great information products about stuff that's totally irrelevant to my business, and I just have to ignore it. And it's like, you know what? I'm not going to do Amazon drop shipping. It can be the best information product, can be a great opportunity. I could be the perfect person in this market to take advantage of the specific things, but it's just not where I want to go. It's just not the direction my business wants to go. And it's going to be a distraction. It's going to pull me away. It's going to not just slow me down, but maybe take me in the opposite direction from where I've been building towards over many years. So what do you think about missed opportunities, Fletch?
Yeah, I would disagree with nothing you said. What I'll also maybe add is the consideration of when you might want to change direction. And that's been something that I've gone through in the last, whip stitch here, year, give or take, where SEO is something I definitely know. I know well. I've made a lot of money with it. I could make more money with it. I still make money with it. But I took a step back and realized that, and you've actually done this in a maybe a different way than I did, where you've made a product. You've got your own information product.
Yeah.
And so making
go buy now.
Go buy now. Go click on David's link and buy his stuff, because he knows what he's talking about, and it's going to help you.
You heard it from Fletch.
Yeah.
You're not prompted at all by me, promise.
If I said it, it's true. No, I'm kind of tongue in cheek, but serious as well. David knows what he's talking about, and what he can help you see is going to be valuable to you if this is something that you're doing. But I've changed direction, and sometimes, maybe a lot of the time, was kind of shiny object, but it was also kind of I was a ship without an anchor, so I went where the wind blew, and so I wound up in great places very often at the exact right time. And I've done that in 3 different careers, right? And I'll say that to the degree I can say. As a wage earner, meaning I was trading my hours for dollars, at 3 different times in 3 completely separate career paths, I made more than $30,000 a month consecutively. And so that's like, oh, okay, it's something to, that's decent, right? But the most recent decision I've made in that regard is not to pull back from SEO, but to realize that I now have SEO as one of the blades I can pull out on my multi-tool, which means I can get traffic and I can rank for whatever I want to rank for. That's nice. So what do I want to rank for? Do I want to rank for SEO and build an agency? Well, I have an agency. I've done that. It worked well. It made me money. But what I've also looked at is the information product that I want to build. I say want, in exactly the way I condemned myself from wanting to use, right? I didn't want to create this information product. What I did was figure out what I needed in life, and then understood all the pieces necessary to get that thing, and then engineered all the rest of the stuff that was active in my mind so that I actually wanted it. I didn't start with want. What I did was realize what I needed, what was good, what was true, what was important. And then I engineered conditions such that I wanted to do what was important. So want never goes out. It's something that's so core to us as a human that it's going to be in play.
But you can tweak it.
What you should do is engineer conditions such that you want to do things that are important and true and good.
And helpful, yeah.
And helpful.
Engineer conditions. Let's say that again. And you engineer conditions where you want to do what is good, right, true, helpful,
important,
etc. Important, yeah. Yeah. I think that's so true. And you can really change what you want. But you were actually, let me actually go back to you're pivoting not so much away from SEO, but to where it's a smaller piece of the puzzle of your business.
And it's not the bow of my ship. It's more of the engine of my ship.
Right. And
so it's what provides me power in knowing I can get where I want to go. But the thing that's directing it and where I'm going to wind up pointing is it is more about what I've been talking about, which is more about navigating your own mind and engineering conditions in your life such that you do succeed in things that are going to be enjoyable when you achieve them.
Right. And I've identified for myself that SEO is a bit more of like, it's like almost the whole ship of my business. And actually when I try to create other ships, it just doesn't seem to work as well. I've just had a lot of data that for me personally, I have focusing heavily on SEO has been most beneficial for my business. And that doesn't mean that I'm right and Fletch is wrong or vice versa. It just, we're different people with different paths and different wants. And different places in our lives and different experiences, and so we have a different path that what's good for us. One person isn't necessarily good for the other.
When you talk about we're different, I do think people, that there's like think about what that means. We each have different things to build with. We, you know, your experiences and my experiences are different, right? They overlap to a degree. That's why we have a relationship. We can talk and all that kind of thing. But what I have to build with is very different than what you have to build with. Right. Absolutely. And so the thing that actually is the right decision for you doesn't mean it's the right decision for me, vice versa. Right. And so everyone listening, same goes, right? Think about what you have to build with and what you can do with that. And then if that can get you where you want to go, then don't worry about the shiny objects. If it can't, well, then start looking at what you need to accumulate and learn and master and understand that can get you where you want to go. And that's how you need to consider what new things you need to be aware of and maybe go in search of and figure out how to, you know, get into your mind so you can work with it and do something with it.
And this is why you can't create like a podcast that's like, okay, Cubicle Liberation podcast. These are the 77 things you need to do to be successful. And any lists that are like that, it's just really absurd because everybody's in a different place and have different objectives. And it can be, do you want to, you know, be the CEO of a big business, or do you want to go live in the mountains in a cabin? I also want to point out, like when Fletch mentioned pivoting, I think that's really important. A lot of businesses have to pivot. What that means is it's not necessarily like you're doing a completely different business model, but maybe you're changing to a slightly different market. You have a different offer. You have different products or services. Your pricing is different. Your pricing structure is different. That is very common in any business that you do often need to pivot. And I think in everybody's life, if you never pivot in your life, I feel like that's kind of like, wow, it's very unlikely that you got really lucky. It's more likely that you just were a stubborn ass who never really wanted to change directions, and no matter how good it would take you. So there's the balance between someone who's constantly changing directions and being sucked into every shiny object. That's not good, but also sticking to your rut or whatever for your whole life. That's also not good. There needs to be some balance here, and you need to take considerations to always be pivoting, but how much are you going to pivot, and is it really something that you should do? Are you maybe some point I decide the SEO path is not for me, and I can pivot completely away from it.
Well, and what you pointed to there as well is considering your personality, right? And that's not really who you are. It got built, right?
Right.
How did it get built? It was largely like there's some genetic components. I'm not saying that. I got 2 kids that are running in and out of the office right now. They're different, right? But what I can also know is that I can change my personality by learning new things and being exposed to new things, and realizing that you do have a power to change what feels normal and natural for yourself, so that you're not really, it feels like your death when you have to go do something else that isn't where your natural inclinations may feel like they are, and where your natural talent and skill lies, to say, I'm going to go do this other new thing now. So the personality that I had, even, talking about what I, talked about with different careers, and I say being successful with them, my inclination is to not be stuck seeing things the way they are. And I say stuck, maybe I should leave that word out when I'm talking about this. My personality was such that I don't mind going and trying to find a new trail, a new path to a different mountain. Even it's fun for me, right? That feels natural to me. That's what I have to be cautious of. I have to be cautious that my personality is such that, oh, it's fine to go over here, right? You may be leaving this huge potential for wealth and success and influence, but like, my personality or my inclinations are such that, great, I get to go find something new, right? And so that does lead to not getting stuck in the way other people might feel stuck, right? Or not be able to see, but it comes with a cost, which is I'm willing to look at shiny objects, so to speak, and try them. But it's not strategically, certainly strategically speaking, in my own life, has left a lot of money on the table, right? Like right now, I had I stuck with what I was doing with geographic information systems, I could have had one of the larger consulting firms in the nation, because I got into it right when it was blossoming and I was good at it, and I could talk about it. I could sell it. I made money with it. I was already in industries that were willing to pay for it. When I left that, I left it for very specific reasons that I think I've talked about on other podcasts, and I don't want to drag this one down with those issues. But there are costs and benefits to all your decisions. And the biggest thing I would want to implore folks to do when they're considering what they're doing is to not be stuck, but to also not be distracted. Right. And there's area between those two that lets you explore, and it lets you put your head down and blinders on, both. And that's a sweet spot that you want to make sure. If you get on either side of that too much, you're going to wind up with problems.
Probably. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Is there still a child at your door?
2.
I think we're getting close. Oh, they're like, are they watching you like through the window?
Oh, they came in to tell me that they raided the cabinet to get candy, and all I could do was say, okay, I'll talk to you afterwards.
At least they're owning up to it.
Yeah. Yeah. They came out with 2 suckers in their mouth and all this kind of stuff. So it's fun.
Like, you didn't stop me.
Yep.
Anyway, so I think that this actually leads naturally into what I think is a really important part of basically anybody's life, which is the relationships that you have, the relationship that you build. We are social creatures, and as Fletcher points out rightly, that it's like, how are you going to make a sale without a relationship of some kind? I think this is very important to me personally, in terms of me moving forward with my business. Like, into how many people I've just kind of like had like in my industry, I've had just kind of like offhand conversations with that have had huge effects on my business positively. And so there was this event called OMG Live that happened for 6-7 years in a row, and I went to all of them, and I thought it was great because I was able to build relationships over time. And where I've met Fletch several times. I am doing a mastermind in the mountains coming up in August 2021.
Colorado, right?
That thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be Colorado, somewhere in the mountains. It'll be a small group, probably 10 to 20 people, something like that, with lots of badasses and stuff like that. So, I mean, the purpose of this is that just getting that kind of like small group or even one-on-one time with other people who have their own experiences and have good experiences, that with important data, positive data, that have, they've made sales, they've built parts of their businesses, maybe they've failed at certain things, but they've kind of actually been able to be somewhat reasonably successful in kind of the digital space. Having those relationships is huge. So even if it's somebody like who you can call upon once a year, that for the rest of your business, who you have, reasonable relationship with, that could be super, super valuable, especially when you're considering like pivoting or changing, where it's like, is it okay to want this? Is this something that's really going to provide a long-term value to me? Having a good relationship with somebody where, you're friends with them, and you can talk to them about that stuff. That's really, really important. And this is just leaving out also like your family and your friends. This is very important to your overall productivity and where you want to go with your life, because, there's kind of this, I don't know what you want to call it, story of, somebody who's super successful in their business, but they have no friends. They've alienated their family. That doesn't sound very good either. If you have $10 billion, but everybody hates you, I wouldn't want that personally. So I think that's something that, it should be very important and should always be in your considerations.
Well, yeah, we talked a little bit off camera before the recording that you might be watching starts, about the value of relationships. And one of the first things, as David said, that I brought up is like, you can't make a sale without a relationship, right? People need to know about you. You need to know about them to get to a place where you can each decide that it's worth the trade. And so just strictly from a business sense, you've got to consider that, right? And moreover, one of the other things that David talked about were like the OMG Live events, and I've been to other events, I'm sure David has as well, where you may wind up meeting somebody who helps you see something that you did not see before. And it's not really a shiny object. It's just a distinction that you can say, wow, if I really focus on local, because like SEO is like, okay, your offer is not SEO. If you think that, you're wrong, right? You may be very clear on what you're doing, but if you don't describe it better to someone else, as far as exactly what is going to happen and what the benefits are going to be, you're going to have a really hard time making a sale. Okay. So distinctions are incredibly important. And many, if not most, of the distinctions that I've made over the last decade or so have been from other people. Other people helped me see that there was a distinction, a line where I thought it was SEO that I was doing, but actually what I'm doing is there was a line drawn. It's like, what am I really doing? I'm building content and building links, and that's it. Like if I'm doing something other than that, then, and I'm describing it differently than that, it's going to come across as fuzzy potentially to a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I've lost count of how many people who I've just kind of had, who I've built relationships with, and the full context of that, not just that relationship, but what I've done and what they've done. They can just say like a couple of things, and it's like, oh, wow, that's really huge. I think that's really helpful. And then sometimes just having like someone who you can bounce a question or an idea off of is really valuable. It reminds me a lot of like when you go to call like your internet service provider or any big company, and they always have like these standard answers that seem to cover a lot of what's there. But most of the time when I'm calling, it's not covered. That's not something that is like a standard answer. There's not like a Google search that you can go to do that will give you the answer for what you need to do to move forward in your life and your business. Okay. And so having someone who you have a relationship with, who can add some context, who can look at your situation through their own eyes, through their own lenses, through their own perspectives, their own frames, that is going to be super, super valuable. In other words, listen to your wife.
Here's something kind of fun and funny to do, right? So go to Google or DuckDuckGo or Yahoo or Bing or wherever you want to go, or Amazon, right? All search engines, YouTube. Type in what is important.
Oh, that's hilarious. Oh, that's funny.
See if someone else can give you that answer.
Oh, wow. I kind of actually want to try this right now.
Do it. Bring it up, buddy.
Let's pull this down. What's most important to you? It's like career stuff.
Yeah, or even what
Maybe
should
there's
I
actually
do?
some good answers in here.
Type in what should I do? This is not something someone else can really give you until they know you more. Right. And we think Google maybe know us and they have personalized results and all this kind of thing. But until you're really sitting with somebody and they understand more about where you are, they're going to be able to help you see things that you didn't see before. It's not something you're going to get off the internet by typing in a search query. It's just not.
Mm-hmm. There's also like the world we live in, new situations are constantly arising. You think about how much new technology there has been, you know, what websites, what services didn't exist 20 years ago. We're encountering constantly new and novel situations that maybe no one else has encountered or very few people have encountered. So even if you know someone, even if you consider yourself like, let's say you are more successful than someone else, but they have some amount of moderate success, you can still, there's still a reasonable chance that they have situations that they've been in that you have not been in. That can be helpful to you understanding what's really going on, where you can move forward in your life and in your business.
It would be difficult for me to imagine anyone who's had only the experiences I have had.
It seems impossible.
So what does that mean?
Impossible.
It means they've had other experiences where they've been able to see things that I have not seen. And to me, that is why building relationships and understanding them is important, and culturing culturing is not the right word. Taking care of them.
Part of the building, maintaining.
Part of the building and maintaining piece. This is something that has been very responsible for me seeing things differently and seeing different things. Those are a little different, very similar, but actually very different. That it's hard to overestimate the importance that type of activity has had on my life.
I'm trying to envision, like, without just a handful of people, there's a handful of people that have an outsized effect on my business. Like, if I didn't build a relationship with those people, like, where would I be?
You can just call me by name, David, if you'd like to. Yeah, it's fine.
Fletch, their names are Fletch Rooney, Joshua, the Fletch Man, and
I'm joking.
Snake Bomb.
Yeah.
So, well, I think that covers a lot of the different ways in which you can identify. I think we've covered a lot of ground on identifying what's important, what's not important. It's not a simple answer because, again, it's not like everybody's in different places in their lives.
The thing is, it gets to a point where it's very clear and simple to see, but it takes
for you,
a lot of work to get to the point where it looks clear and simple.
I agree.
Right? I say a lot of work, meaning it might not be the thing you're naturally inclined to do or feel like is important. But when you get to that point, it's very clear to say, I should definitely do this and not that. Like, you can compare two things, right? One of the things our mind does very well is sees difference. And if you can get two scenarios and look at them clearly, you can say, oh, this one, right? Not this one. And that's where you want to be. And if you're only really considering one thing, you can't compare it to something else. And hence, again, one of the reasons that we called this Cubicle Liberation podcast is that it was kind of set up to help people who are at least open to considering something other than what they're currently doing and trying to figure out how to compare those and what it looks like to kind of be in a world outside of where you're told what to do every day and given some money for that. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. You can get to a point where it's very clear. I agree. And not just clear, but also correct and true to a significant degree. Sometimes you think it's clear, but it's not really clear. You're looking at a mirage. So hopefully this is helpful to you guys. Thanks for listening. And do you have anything else you want to mention on the subject, or I think we're good to go?
All good, man. I'm just continuing to work on my book and program. So
nice.
You'll be all hearing about that. Working title is Navigating Your Mind, Engineering Conditions for Success. Whether that winds up being the title and subtitle, I don't know, but that'll give people a general indication on what it's going to be about and where it's coming from. So,
okay, well, we'll keep plugging that as we go along, especially as you get to releasing that. So look for that.
That's the first time I've mentioned it publicly. So
I got it out of you.
You got the inside scoop here.
Inside scoop. All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Like and subscribe.
Yes, please.